subject to inspection. More
Hey, souvenir program.
Please remember.
In Chicago, there are two distinct baseball experiences, one on the north side and the other on the south. On the north side, there's Wrigley Field, which opened back in 1914 as Weigman Park. It was originally home to a team from the short-lived Federal League, the Chicago Whales. The Cubs moved into the park in 1960 and after that league folded. The park was renamed Wrigley Field in 1926, a few years after chewing gum king William Wrigley bought the team. There were other changes to the park at that time.
In the late 1920s, it was actually double-decked. The current bleachers and scoreboard we see today, those were built in the 1930s. And except for some minor changes here or there, the ballpark has pretty much stayed the same the last 65 years or so.
It was always admired by players and fans for its beauty, but Wrigley wasn't always the fan draw that it is today. Back in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s, when the Cubs usually wallowed in the second division, and there were no trendy bars or restaurants to attract visitors to the then working-class Lakeview neighborhood, attendance figures of a few thousand people were commonplace at Wrigley.
In '60, when I first came to the big league, on the weekend, we was only drawing about, well, during the week, we was only drawing about 7,000 people. And I tell the guys on the inside that they didn't open the upper deck until the weekend. They didn't have to draw as many people. They wanted to make sure people come in and enjoy a game of baseball.
Now, however, Wrigley Field has become a baseball shrine, one of the few stadiums left with connections to the game's storied past. After more than 70 years of playing only day games, Wrigley finally added lights in 1988. Now, the surrounding neighborhood has become almost as much an attraction to party-hungry visitors as the park itself.
It's become such a hot ticket that a lot of these people can't get into the game, so what's the next best thing? Go around Wrigley Field, hang out, drink with your buddies, and watch the game on the TVs, and then celebrate when the Cubs win or celebrate when the Cubs lose. It really doesn't matter to them.
The Cubs recently struck a deal with the city to increase the number of night games, and the team now gets millions annually in revenue from rooftop owners who charge admission for unique views of Wrigley across the street from the park. Club officials continue to consider options, including bleacher expansion, to increase revenues for the 39,000-seat stadium.
Go up just 2 hours to Milwaukee and see a brand new stadium. You know, they've got restaurants and microbreweries and all kinds of fancy things that our beautiful gem of a ballpark can't provide. So we're always trying, as I think any owner should, trying to improve their product, improve the level of amenities and services to your fans.
But despite some changes, the Wrigley experience is largely the same as it was 60 years ago. From the ivy-covered walls to the capricious winds that make it a hitter's paradise one day and a pitcher's best friend the next.
The electricity in this ballpark is fantastic. It still is. Everybody that comes up to the booth, I ask, first time, they say, what was it? It's just something special.
The north side may get more publicity, but the south side has an appeal of its own. The neighborhood surrounding U.S. Cellular Field, where the White Sox play, has as much history as any in Chicago. On the east side of the park, there's Bronzeville, the oldest African-American neighborhood in the city, where jazz and blues art forms developed. On the west side is Bridgeport, which spawned 5 mayors and is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. In the middle, there once stood Old Comiskey Park, built by namesake Sox owner Charles Comiskey in 1910.
He constructed Comiskey Park, a palatial stadium with arched windows and a very plain brick facade. But at the time, it was almost hailed as the Roman Coliseum because of its largesse. Baseball had not seen a stadium of this magnitude before.
It was home to White Sox baseball for 80 years, but the Sox weren't the only attraction here. Just as the Bears once played at Wrigley Field, the NFL Chicago Cardinals called Comiskey their home. Music acts like the Beatles had concerts here. The very first All-Star game, the brainchild of Chicago Tribune sports editor Arch Ward, was held here in 1933. And the Negro League's version of the All-Star game, the East-West All-Star game, was an annual Comiskey event from the 30s to the 50s.
It was a place that could hold several thousand fans. It was probably one of the largest venues where Negro League teams could play. Obviously, Chicago is a great place to visit for African Americans. It was certainly a Midwestern mecca for African Americans to come to. And the game thrived. It started off with around 20 or 30,000 fans in its initial year, and then as years went on, it would get up to about 50,000 fans.
During its last years, however, the old park was beginning to show its age.
That particular stadium, when I was playing right field, I had to put plastic bags underneath my sock because the drainage wasn't that good as it was now. And when they took the tarp off the field, everything rolled in the right field where I was. So I was always standing in water, and it was always damp and dreary there.
Comiskey also had periods where a combination of its inner city location, bad teams, and the crosstown Cubs affected attendance. Sox owners considered moving in the late 60s, the mid-70s, and late 80s. It also began to develop a somewhat seedy reputation during its final years.
You sat in the upper decks in the right field and left field, or you sat in the bleachers. People got drunk and fights would break out. You know, it was just like, it just had this whole tough image.
Still, the old Comiskey is a faded but crucial part of Chicago sports history. Those who played there still have fond memories.
You had a blue-collar, nighttime crowd that would go across the street at McCuddy's and have a few Boilermakers and come over to the game, and it would be very rowdy in White Sox Park. It was a good place to pitch. I liked it because the fans were a little closer, I think, than in a new park.
Now across the street sits Comiskey's replacement, once known as the New Comiskey and now known as U.S. Cellular Field. After a few years of initial attendance success, the new park has suffered through attendance problems similar to the old stadium. The team has addressed these problems through extensive renovation, including shaving off much of its upper deck. But on the south side, there are still concerns.
We Sox fans have to spend more time looking at the attendance figures of our games than the actual box scores. White Sox fans come back, but in many ways they're a lot more fickle than Cub fans. They won't go see a losing ball club.